One thing we have seen today is that heroes come from all walks of life. There is no formula for bravery. There is no statistic that can accurately capture the personal struggles and stresses that many South Africans have faced. But when you come into contact with someone who has gone beyond what is expected of them, who has transcended the limitations that life has placed on them, you will know it. Because heroism is intangible. But when you come into contact with it, it inspires you to be a better person. Let's meet our final real-life hero of the day.
My name's Peter Wanless. I'm 61 years old, going on 62, and I live in Durbanville. I'm a school teacher, and by accident more than by design, that became my career, because I found when I left school that I couldn't go into the field that I wanted to go into, because simply my mom, who was widowed, could not afford to pay the university fees. The government then was trying to encourage people to become teachers, and I discovered that I could get a bursary to become a teacher, and they paid for my studies until I qualified. Savings is not something that comes very easily to one, especially when, like me, you had to bring up a family on a teacher's salary. Fortunately, I got hooked on the idea of putting away a monthly amount when I started working, and I took out a number of, at the moment, laughably small policies, but it's what I could afford at the time. And some of them were literally 10 Rand a month. But I started working for 110 Rand a month, so it was quite a sizable proportion of my salary then. In the 70s and 80s, my 4 kids came along, and I thought it was a good idea to put something away for each of them as well, seen as was a good idea for me. And obviously one wants all the best for one's children, so I didn't want my children to have to go through the same disappointment as I did. And so as each one came along, I took out a policy for them to start off, and I would imagine and try and put a child through a university education. Nowadays I believe it costs anything from 25 to 30,000 Rand a year, and if you're just an ordinary wage or salary earner, that's a huge amount of money to take out of your salary, and you still have the expense of feeding your child, clothing your child, transporting your child. To have something in reserve, something that you know is going to be there at the time that you need it, just to get you started on the process of educating, completing the education. It probably won't pay everything, because there's so many unforeseeable costs, but it can get you on the road to success. So each of my children had a policy to help them to get started at university. My eldest son studied actuarial science, and he's now an actuary. My second eldest son studied chemical engineering, and he's now a lecturer in chemical engineering. And then those are my 2 older children. Then I have a daughter who studied medicine for a year, but then decided that she was not cut out to be a doctor, but that she was cut out to be a musician. She's a very, very talented girl, and she then went on to study music at university. And my younger daughter decided that she didn't want to study at all. She's an artist, so we could use that money for other things to assist her. Saving for the future is important because one has to live in the future and in the present. So obviously you need money to feed and clothe yourselves, to have a good life now, but one also has to think ahead. You know, for the same reason that you fill up your car with petrol, because you're not going to be just driving now, you're going to need to drive tomorrow as well. So you know, you can't drive on an empty tank. You can't live on an empty bank account. You have to have money to survive. The advice I'd give to a young person nowadays is make a commitment. Look at your expenses. Be quite brutally frank with yourself in terms of things that are nice to have and things that you have to have. And then make a commitment to put something away regularly. And don't just make it a promise to yourself. Get other people involved in your promise, because it's very easy to break a promise to yourself. But once you've signed, once you've got a stop order, once it's official, it becomes much easier, and it becomes less painful as well, because you tend not to notice it on a month-to-month basis. So you have to make the decision once and commit yourself to that decision. Once you've done that, it becomes easier. So, do you have to be wealthy before you can save? No. I would say anybody can cut down on something and put that money away to save. It's probably a bit more difficult for a person at the lower end of the income bracket because they are really focusing on essentials. So yes, it is more difficult and probably involves more sacrifices, but it is possible, I believe, for everybody to save in relation and in proportion to what they're earning.